of the falling and eating shit and avoiding it, like what did you learn from that that kind of propelled you into where you are now?
I think that there is no limit to the amount of shit you can eat, and you just have to get back up. Like it's like I mean, there's so many cliches about failing your way to success, but ultimately it's that simple. Like it's just like you have to accept that you are not infallible. There are people who are better than you. There are people who are worse than you that are just going to be luckier than you are. Like there's all kinds of factors that are going to go in that are completely out of your control. And sometimes you just have to burn the candle at both ends and see where this leads and be prepared also that whatever path you have set out for yourself is not what you're going to follow in the end, because there's going to be opportunities that pop out that you don't expect. Like I never expected when I was working for that Finnish media company that a real estate company would call me one day on the phone. Like, how did they even get my number? How do they know who I am? But it happened. And if I had been more closed off about it, I wouldn't be here right now. Maybe I'd be doing something even bigger and better, but maybe I wouldn't. So, and that's one of those things too, like creatively, professionally, in so many ways. Like I've just like you just have to keep an open mind and accept you only have limited control over what's going to happen in this life, and there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, and then there's just going to be these unexpected moments that you have to keep your eyes open for and catch them because they're not going to stick around for very long. And
Can I share two moments in my career that were game changing that relate?
please.
So I'd been a therapist for a number of years doing addiction and mental health work out in Vancouver. And I had worked three different places, kind of like gone up the ladder in terms of like what I could offer as a therapist. And I was in a position where I'd just gone through a divorce. I was kind of like thinking, what's next in my life? I was like not really playing a ton of music at the time. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? I was talking to my friend Thomas, who lives out in Richmond. He's a really, really wonderful guy. He talked about this idea of just like trying to be more open to things. And he was like, he had this, what he called his like summer of saying yes. He was like, if people call me to ask me to do something, I'm just going to say yes always. Because he'd found himself saying no to things or being like, well, maybe who's going? Or what's this going to be? He was always trying to parcel things out. He was like, fuck it, I just want to say yes to things. And I got like real interested in that idea because like, coming up in punk and hardcore, you can kind of come from this like skeptical, kind of almost like culture of critiquing everything,
Yep.
saying no to too many things.
Mm-hmm.
So I got off the phone with Thomas and I was really thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start saying yes to stuff for the next while and see what happens. Because like I was unhappy in my career. I loved the work I did as a therapist, but I just hated my boss and the whole system I was working in. And I was just, unhappy. I'd gone through this divorce, just not feeling good about my life. So 2 days later, I was walking my dog. I have a wiener dog named Blue. And Blue and I are walking down the street, and I'm waiting at a light to cross the street, and this couple comes up. I'm in East Vancouver, and the couple starts like fawning over my dog, chatting, blah, blah, blah. And I start talking to this couple, and the husband of the couple is just like asking me all these like very personal questions, like oddly personal questions. And we're chatting, and I'm just like, usually I would have just brushed this guy off and got out. But I was like, I'll give this guy 2 minutes. And we're chatting and chatting. He goes, what do you do professionally? I'm like, I'm a therapist. And he's like, oh, I run a coaching company. Would you be interested in interviewing? And I was like, yes. So I did a little bit of research. I went and met with the guy, did some interviews. 3 weeks later, I'm working at this guy's consulting firm. And that was how I got into the industry that I'm in now. So I worked in that company for about 5.5 years. And what you said is like, I don't have an ability to join something and do a shitty job. Like I'm like all in, working super hard.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I'm pleasant either. If I see something that I think is bullshit, I'm going to talk about it. Again, I come from like kind of culture of critique.
Right.
And that culture of critique is always based on making things better. But there's 3 things. Sometimes I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I think I do. Second, sometimes I do know what I'm talking about, but I only have a part of the picture. And then third time is like, I totally know what I'm talking about, but the way I'm talking about it isn't the way to go. So the owner of that company and I were just like, poof, poof, poof. And at one point I was like very close to being a partner, like steps away, basically like just a signature away. And we had this really tough conversation. And it was a series of multiple conversations. We had this really tough conversation. 2 weeks later, I'm fired. Totally expecting it, like not expecting it at all. and it was coming at, I expected it based off the conversation, but it wasn't what I expected as the next step in my life.
Right.
And I was in a really, really tough spot in my life. Personally, I'd been going through it as a really, really difficult situation. And I already felt like I had the carpet pulled out from underneath me, and then, the floorboards got pulled out. And I would say from a career point of view, it was the second most important thing that ever happened, because I was put in a position where it's like, okay, so I was a therapist for a long time. I know how to work with people. Now I've worked in this world where I learned sales. I learned all these things. And I'm fucking chronic pointing out the problems in everyone else's process. So if I think I'm so fucking smart, I better start my own company.
Right.
And I started my own company, and that's how Cadence happened. And it was super hard work to get it going, but it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done professionally, is starting my own business, building it up, hiring staff, helping them have like a good quality of life just from like paying them equitably and fairly. But without first being willing to say yes to something, but the second, without being willing to eat complete shit, but also be like, okay, I'll deal with this. There's no Cadence, there's no this podcast, any of these things. And the way I'd relate it to your story is like being willing to bet on myself, but also being willing to totally eat shit and get back up.
I mean, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and there might be a third career in your, or a fourth career or 10th career. And I mean, whenever I talk to young people who are starting out, like whether they're going to school or starting their work life, I always just try, because there's so much pressure in so many cases. And I was just like, just relax, like just do this. If it works out and you like it, it might lead to something better, you might discover something about yourself. And it's just, I mean, I think that like the dark moments, like especially when you really get invested into something and you've put so much of yourself into it and then it falls apart on you, as awful as that feels, once you've done it a couple times and it's happened to you, it's not that you're desensitized to it. You just start to appreciate, okay, I don't see how this is going to make things better for me, but I just like, it's happened to me a couple times. I just have to have faith in myself, and I will figure this out. And as bad as it feels now, we'll turn this into something better, and I'll learn from it. And I feel like I've never stopped learning those lessons. And I mean, hopefully the rug and the floorboards and the subfloor and everything else don't come out from under me again, because I don't need any more roller coasters. But I think that's like such an important thing to know and to experience. And a lot of times when I'm speaking to people who are going through these rough periods, like I feel like that's such an important place to steer them to. And just like, you gotta like look outside of yourself right now. I know how dark this moment is, but you have no idea what this is going to lead to, and the strength and wisdom you're going to get from having gone through this. And again, that's the small comfort often at the time, but afterwards it can make a big difference.
Huge, 100%. I like we said, it's like don't steer away from that darkness, like kind of steer into it with the least like kind of like corny version of this. It's like, you got to go through this to get to the good stuff, and to be able to build on it. So the second thing that stood out to me about your career, like the first was that willingness to bet on yourself, but the second is like, as you tell me your story, it feels like tightly controlled chaos as you're kind of going up that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version of the story, and it just makes it sound like it's like some Mario game where I'm hopping from one cloud to the other and just rising. Like, no, I mean that job when I got the job as a financial analyst, like, I mean, how I even got that job, I saw an ad for it. I was like, I think I could do this, but I don't know what a financial analyst is. So the day before my interview, I went to the bookstore and went into it was the Chapters whatever down by the movie theater here on Richmond Street, and like looked at books on what does a financial analyst actually do, because I had no idea. And I'm like, okay, I think I can figure this out, and like, this is the software that you use. So I bought 3 books that I brought in my backpack to work, and when I couldn't figure out what I was doing, I would just go to the bathroom with my books and like read about it. Anyway, I didn't know what I was doing. Full disclosure, I think at this point the statute of limitations has passed. I knew what the outcome was that they wanted. I didn't know how to get there, but I was just analyzing data. So I would just like pump out numbers that, like, I know that's what they want. They were so happy with me. I remember the owner of the company came over to me, and he's just like this like big cavalier showboating guy. And he's like, "You're the young genius everyone's talking." I'm like, "Uh-huh." And I knew that my timeline was short because they're going to figure out eventually that I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, that one certainly ended with I don't remember whether I quit or was fired, but it was one or the other. They were going to happen. If I quit, I was going to be fired like the next day, and I knew I had to get out of there because I do not belong here. But I had that experience. It was I did not figure out that job. Do not hire me as a financial analyst. But it was an industry that I learned about, and then I just took that experience and whatever the next job was. It might have been the Finnish media company. And I was like, okay, well, I know I've studied e-commerce and I have a creative background, so I just parlayed those two together and ended up doing something completely different.